Bruce Seldon. If I want his title, I gotta beat him. Bruce Seldon, he's champion, and no one knows him. Joe Hip knows Seldon, made his face look like hamburger. Bruce Seldon, Tony Tucker knows him too. 9 straight knockouts. He got a great jab. Bruce Seldon, it's like a jackhammer, always to the face. Bruce Seldon, no one knows him. Ha! That's because no one wants to.
Bruce Seldon, Mike Tyson, Liberation, champion versus champion, July 13th live on pay-per-view from the MGM Grand.
For the second time in his 4 fights since leaving prison, Mike Tyson's short-term career hits a road bump.
Right. Not many men can stop Tyson, but little germs apparently can. Mike Tyson was expected to beat up Bruce Seldon on July 13th and take his WBA belt in the process, but that will not happen. ESPN has learned that after canceling a public workout today in Las Vegas, Tyson pulled out of his heavyweight title fight with Seldon because of bronchitis-like symptoms. The title fight has been rescheduled for September the 7th. Tyson was supposed to work out today at the MGM Grand Hotel, which is the site of the bout. That was canceled, fueling speculation that the whole thing was off. Tyson was reportedly going to see a doctor and then to be checked by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. In any case, that bout with Seldon is off until September. This is the second time since Tyson was released from prison that he's had a bout postponed. In November, Tyson pulled out of his fight with Buster Mathis Jr. because of a broken thumb. Tyson would then come back 6 weeks later to beat Buster in 3 rounds. Stu? Seldon will get to hold on to his WBA heavyweight title a little longer than expected. ESPN has learned that Seldon's bout with Mike Tyson has been postponed because Tyson is ailing with bronchitis-like symptoms. The bout was originally scheduled for July the 13th, but now it's been pushed back to September the 7th. Tyson canceled the public workout scheduled for today at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas. He was reportedly going to see a doctor and then to be examined by the Nevada Athletic Commission. In a conference call on Monday, Tyson said he was healthy and ready to fight, but the bout is now off. Stu?
As of this morning, Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon were scheduled to meet July 13th in Las Vegas. As of now, though, the best fight next week in Vegas may just be between a pit boss and a drunk at the roulette table over just what the drunk considers an odd number. With the story of the Tyson fight's knockout, here is Nick Charles.
The doctor treating Mike Tyson is also employed by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and both are satisfied his illness makes a fight next Saturday impossible.
He's been under treatment. His progress has been very slow. He's been unable to train, essentially, because of his bronchitis. He is recovering, but not recovered full enough for him to be 100%. And in my opinion, I don't think that he would be ready for a heavyweight championship bout.
I say he hasn't been able to train completely for 3 weeks, meaning he would go in there and he would be able to box a few rounds, but he wouldn't be able to finish his calisthenics. He'd go in there and he'd do the heavy bag. He wouldn't be able to box as long as he wanted. He was short of breath all up for the first 2 weeks he was here.
This is the 3rd time in Tyson's last 5 scheduled fights that he's had to postpone or cancel. He pulled out of a 1991 fight with Evander Holyfield because of a rib injury. Then last October, preparing for his 2nd fight after being released from prison, broke a bone in his thumb, pushing back his meeting with Buster Mathis Jr. 6 weeks. Now bronchitis. But Tyson's management said given his condition and lack of preparation, a fight next Saturday night would be a mistake for all concerned.
If you paid your money to see Mike Tyson in 10 days from now, you wouldn't get the best of Mike Tyson. So who would be fooling who? That's when we would be in the wrong. Mike Tyson needs to be protected to the point where he's healthy, and then you can get him anybody you want. And that's the person that everybody wants to see.
As for the possibility of the Seldon fight, which hadn't sold out, now being shoved to the back burner so Tyson could take on Lennox Lewis and his $45 million offer.
No more hiding behind the tree and under the rock. Lennox Lewis was offered $13.5 million to fight Mike Tyson, and he turned it down. He opted to take $4 million and run like a thief in the night and hide and try to play the game like he wanted to fight.
King said he'll announce next week a new date for the Seldon fight, most likely in September. Nick Charles, CNN Sports.
Apparently, the only thing that can lick Mike Tyson these days is bronchitis. With his WBA title bout with Bruce Seldon 10 days away and ailing, Tyson pulled out Wednesday. It's the third time in his last 5 scheduled fights that Tyson has postponed or canceled a bout. Tyson's manager and doctor said the bronchitis set him too far back to fight Seldon on July 13th.
Well, since Mike's been in town, Mike has not had a full day's workout like he would normally have anyway. He's been feeling weak.
He is recovering, but not recovered full enough for him to be 100%. And in my opinion, I don't think that he would be ready for a heavyweight championship bout.
The title fight has been rescheduled for September 7th. Don King denied Tyson is setting a pattern of postponement. Said King, "I will continue to take the high road," and say that this is one of those things that happens to human beings.
Turning to boxing now, for Bruce Seldon, it wasn't so much postponing a fight as it might have been postponing the inevitable. Seldon got a reprieve from his fight against Mike Tyson on July 13th because Tyson came down with bronchitis. But a reprieve is not a pardon, after all. The fight between Tyson and Seldon has been rescheduled for September 7 at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. You'll recall Tyson postponed his November fight against Buster Mathis Jr., only to come back 6 weeks later and knock him silly.
Who knows when the next heavyweight championship fight is? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? How about September 7th? Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon mix it up in Las Vegas just over 3 weeks from today. And today, Tyson did some ring work at the MGM Grand. And as he likes to say, he was throwing punches with bad intentions. At least that's what it looks like. Mike just about wearing out those training pads he's pounding on right there. Afterwards, Tyson was asked about his time in jail. He answered, in part, referring to other heavyweight fighters.
Only thing I was treated different than other inmates was that I was treated worse than they were because I was Mike Tyson. And God forbid if any of those guys went in prison after some of those Holyfield and all those guys said them nasty things about, God knows what they would have been doing, because they might not have been able to take it. They'd have probably been wearing makeup. I don't believe in rehab. I don't believe in rehabilitation. I believe some people are smarter than others, and they watch the next time they get out of trouble. There's no such thing as rehabilitation. Just, I didn't like that experience, so I'm not going to go that route anymore to get in trouble no more. But I'm still capable of doing the same thing. Bruce Seldon, if I want his title, I got to beat him. He's champion, and no one knows him. Joe Hip knows Seldon, made his face look like hamburger. Tony Tucker knows him too. Got a jab like a jackhammer. No one knows him. That's because no one wants to.
Bruce Seldon, Mike Tyson. Liberation. Champion versus champion. Saturday, September 7th. Live on pay-per-view from the MGM Grand. Call your cable or satellite company. On September 7th, WBA heavyweight champion Bruce Seldon fights WBC champion Mike Tyson. The best boxer meets its hardest puncher.
7.
Will be unlucky for one of them.
7.
Also on the 7th, Felix Trinidad defends his welterweight title against dangerous Ray Lovato. This will be Trinidad's 7th title defense.
7.
And super welterweight champion Terry Norris fights Alex Rios.
7.
It could be his 50th win or 7th loss.
7.
Plus on the 7th, boxing's newest sensation, Christy Martin. Many say she's the world's best woman fighter. Now you'll see why.
7.
Saturday, September
7.
Liberation, champion versus champion. 3 championship fights plus Christy Martin. Live on pay-per-view from the MGM Grand.
7.
For most people, it's lucky.
7.
For some, it isn't.
Live, Saturday night, September 7th on Request Pay-Per-View.
And may want Bruce Seldon's title, but he may not be willing to pay the price. Seldon, Tyson, champion versus champion. Live on pay-per-view.
Stop by your nearest Subway store for a coupon for $5 off Tyson vs. Seldon on Impulse Entertainment, and find out how you can win a trip for 2 to the fight at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas.
Seldon, Tyson, champion versus champion. Live on pay-per-view.
2/3 of the divided heavyweight title were linked together Tuesday in Los Angeles. WBC champion Mike Tyson and the WBA's Bruce Seldon were together for the first time since their July 13th fight was postponed. Mike Tyson had bronchitis then, but Tuesday he looked healthy and he sounded dead serious.
You know, my main objective is just to fight. I don't look if I'm in a fight and say, well, that's a good jab. He has a good jab. Well, I respect that. That's good. No, I just want to kill them. You know, just do my best. Maybe just kill. I'm trying to just clean it up. My parole officer's listening to me. Yeah, I think maybe I have the feeling of killing somebody, I guess. I don't think I can really kill somebody. I feel like I want to kill somebody.
Bruce Seldon?
Yeah, anyone who I'm fighting.
I want to break his will. I want to break his will early. I want to get him to know that you're not fighting a tomato can this time, champ. You know, it's not a tomato can, champ. You know, things aren't the way they used to be, champ. You know, this isn't Buster Mathis you're fighting. This is Bruce Seldon.
Seldon-Tyson will happen nearly 2 months later than originally planned. Mike Tyson, though, is already looking ahead to November 9th, when after a 5-year delay, we've learned he and Evander Holyfield will finally come to terms. Nick Charles, CNN, Los Angeles.
Now, as for Holyfield, he hasn't fought since beating up overstuffed middleweight Bobby Chiss. Inga.
Welcome back to SportsCenter. It's either Hands Across America 2 or the Mike Tyson-Bruce Seldon presser. Iron Mike will throw hands with his old sparring partner September 7th.
He knows what I can do. He knows what I'm going to do. If he doesn't, he's going to find out.
I know what it takes to defeat each and every opponent that is put in front of me. I am a champion. I have to have the heart of a champion. I have to fight like a champion. And on September 7th, you truly will see Bruce Seldon fighting his off.
Bruce Seldon says he won't pull any punches when he fights Mike Tyson Saturday night in Las Vegas. Says Seldon, I'm going to let it all hang out. I'm going to have to eat my Wheaties and be on my game. This is a fight that will lift me to superstardom. Seldon also feels Tyson's lost his drive. Tyson's retort, everybody knocks me out with their mouth. Everybody kills me with their mouth. Like Tyson, Seldon has used boxing as a way to escape a difficult and troubled childhood. Charlie Steiner reports.
Bruce Seldon keeps having this dream.
Me and Mike Tyson going 12 rounds. He gives me a standing 8 count. I give him a standing 8 count. He cuts me. I cut him. The fight goes 12 rounds. At the sound of the 12th round, the bell, my dream ends. I wake up out of my dream. And I had this dream 3 times. So I'm anxious. I want to see how that dream turned out.
Seldon's long journey began on the mean streets of Atlantic City, behind bars for 4 years at the age of 16 for armed robbery, before ultimately getting into the mainstream.
At a young age, I started, God forgive me for it, but I started playing with guns. And I picked up a gun one day and I put it to somebody's face, and I got caught, and I went to prison for that. 1985, they started a boxing team. And just guys throughout the prison started saying, man, you got so much energy, you know what I'm saying? You got so much in. Why don't you start boxing? Why don't you pick up a pair of boxing gloves?
He did, and the move turned Seldon's life around. After winning the prison heavyweight title in New Jersey, Seldon was set free in 1987 and turned professional a year later, winning his first 18 fights. But back-to-back losses to Oliver McCall and Riddick Bowe in 1991 dropped Seldon back down the heavyweight ladder.
Boxing world kind of like forgot about me. They kind of like stepped on me. They said, here's this big Adonis body type of guy. Everybody's looking at me to being somebody, but everybody thought I, was just a guy with a nice body that couldn't really fight, that had a glass chin.
But Seldon has lost just once since then, and when George Foreman was stripped of his WBA championship for not fighting Tucker, then the #1 contender, Seldon, stepped in and took out Tucker in 7 to win the title.
On April 8th, 1995, when Mills Lane came over to me and said, you're the champ of the world. I could have done a Three Stooges act, man. I could have laid on that floor and spun around in circles. I was so happy, man. I was so excited.
Every day, every single day, we sit down and we talk. And Bruce says to me, I got a lot to prove, not only to the people, but to himself.
But why will this fight be any different than any of the other Tyson comeback efforts, none of which has gone past the 3rd round?
Whether Frank Bruno was intimidated or whether he was just froze up or whatever, he got caught up in whatever. But he just stood there, and it's just like Mike just hitting that heavy bag. He was right there, and standing in front of Mike Tyson is not the thing to do.
He's more of an animal that goes right after his prey, without looking at the possibility of his prey getting away from him.
And if he does get away, and if one of the better jabs in boxing can be more than just a nuisance to Tyson, maybe Seldon can do what only one man has done before him.
Just looking at that tape and saying, God, I could imagine how Buster Douglas felt that night, you know? I could imagine if I could have been in his soul that night, I could imagine how he felt, knowing that he beat the baddest man considered on the planet. You know, I could imagine what was going through his body when they raised his hands in victory. And I just, you know, I look at that and I say, I want that to be me. I want to feel that feeling.
Seldon's record is 33-3 with 29 knockouts. Tyson 44-1 and 3-0 since he got out of prison on March 25th, 1995. Coming up, approaches for Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon. They did some verbal sparring today.
I'm in the hurt business, and this is what I do, and I enjoy what I do.
Mike Tyson's not going to defeat me. Mike Tyson is not going to take my title from me.
Buster Douglas is the only boxer to ever beat Mike Tyson. Bruce Seldon is well aware of that, and he has watched the Douglas-Tyson bout over and over again as he gets ready for his bout against Tyson on Saturday night. Like Douglas, Seldon's best punch is a jab, but it was Tyson who had the best verbal jab of today's pre-fight press conference.
I went through some ordeals. I got out of prison. I'm still dealing with some situations that I may just go back and see, but I'm just happy to just be around and to just continue doing what I do best. And this is what I do. This you know, regardless of, you know, me, I'm pious and I'm humble. I'm in the hurt business, and this is what I do.
I feel as though, you know, I have to be confident, and I feel as though Mike Tyson's not going to defeat me. Mike Tyson is not going to take my title from me.
More on the press conference and a look ahead to Saturday night's bout later on this edition of Sports Center.
Seldon may need an iron jaw to have a wisp of a chance against Mike Tyson on Saturday night. Seldon is a 20-1 underdog. Tyson looking to add the WBA belt to his rebuilt collection of hardware. Today, the final pronouncements and the unique spectacle of the boxing press conference. Mark Schwartz was there.
Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon endured yet another mind-numbing and monotonous Don King promotion, which was billed as a press conference, during which the self-inflicted blows Tyson sustained on the dais could be among the most punishing he'll suffer all week. Seldon is about as anonymous a champion as you'll ever find, certainly in the heavyweight ranks. Like Tyson, he has served time in prison, and like Tyson, he's endured the tragic deaths of his mother and of his mentor. But that's about where the comparisons end. Tyson remains the most formidable fighting force on the planet. Seldon won his title by stopping a spent 36-year-old named Tony Tucker.
This is something that I dreamed of for a long time, you know. And on April 8th, on April 9th, when I woke up that morning and looked on my dresser and seen that I was the heavyweight champion of the world, I knew that this day was definitely going to be in my future. When Mike Tyson was released from prison, I knew that eventually him and I would have to fight.
I went through some ordeals. I got out of prison. I'm still dealing with some situations that I may just go back and see, but I'm just happy to just be around and to just continue doing what I do best. And this is what I do. This you know, regardless of, you know, me, I'm pious and I'm humble. I'm in the hurt business, and this is what I do.
What we have here is a fighting machine, the best that ever lived, I believe, and I think history will dictate that if they can keep both of us out of jail. Yeah.
You know, I never thought that I would be here in this spot, you know what I'm saying? But I want to give all thanks to you guys, you know what I'm saying? You guys are great, you know. I have no bad words for you guys at all.
All right, I'm joined now by USA Today boxing columnist John Saraceno. And John spoke to Bruce Seldon. He said he's been through a championship bout, but admitted he's never been through anything like this before. How did he handle his first major event?
Well, Mark, I think he did a smart thing by stuffing the trash talk a lot of fighters use against Mike Tyson. But in a sense, all the handshaking and glad-handing and thanking of Tyson, I think, really works against Bruce Seldon. I think he showed too much respect for him, and I think he was in too much awe of the champion.
Now, Tyson has this sense for people. How might he capitalize on Seldon's activities?
Well, Tyson definitely picked up on those signals. Any fighter would, and perhaps sense that Seldon could be a little intimidated. I think Tyson will come at Seldon more aggressively than he may have normally because Seldon's a very good jabber. I think the fight could go less than 5 rounds.
All right, John. On Friday, we'll have full coverage of the Tyson-Seldon weigh-in. That'll be on the 6:30 Sports Center. Reporting from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas with John Saraceno, I'm Mark Schwartz, ESPN.
Okay, guys, also part of today's festivities in Vegas, a ceremony as the WBC honored Don King as he is now promoting his 200th WBC fight.
We're all sort of tired of hearing. Athlete says, I don't get any respect, and usually we don't buy into it. But you'd think the least Mike Tyson could do is get Bruce Seldon's name right in the press conference. Called him Sheldon. After all, the guy just used to be a sparring partner. Tyson and Seldon will spar for real Saturday night, and our Mark Schwartz is in Vegas for the verbal jabs and misjabs. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll see just how much Tyson and Seldon weigh Friday. Coverage of the tipping of the scales during the 6:30 Eastern Sports Center.
Well, if it was a bodybuilding contest, Bruce Seldon would have a great shot at winning. Seldon is the WBA heavyweight champion. He has a body that appears to have been sculpted out of granite. But what is his jaw made of? Not to mention his heart. We'll find out. Tomorrow, Seldon will defend his title against Mike Tyson in Las Vegas. Iron Mike's first real test since coming out of prison. They held the weigh-in today in Las Vegas. Tyson looking confident at 219 pounds. Seldon actually heavier at 229. And Bruce Seldon hopes to be the 1996 version of Buster Douglas.
You know, I look at Buster Douglas when he beat Mike Tyson. I also watch I look at the fight, how he beat him, what it took to win, but I mainly pay attention to what he said after the fight, when he said how he stayed relaxed and he stayed calm, and he didn't let Tyson, nor Team Tyson, get up under his skin.
Now, the tail of the tape shows the two men are pretty close in size. Seldon does have an 8-inch advantage in his reach. That'll help because Seldon is known for a strong jab, but he does not have tremendous punching power. That could be a problem. Other numbers of note, Tyson will make $15 million, Seldon $5 million.
Vegas, a late trickle of Bruce Seldon money has dropped Mike Tyson to a 17-1 favorite for tomorrow night's heavyweight championship fight. But Seldon just ain't a heavy underdog. He's the heavier fighter. The ritual of assessing the beef, the weigh-in. Mark Schwartz was scale side.
For Bruce Seldon, there is no turning back. He went eyeball to eyeball with Mike Tyson at Friday's weigh-in. Only 32 hours before he must step into the ring against Iron Mike.
He is the current WBC heavyweight champion of the world. Here is Iron Mike Tyson. $219 pounds for Iron Mike Tyson. The WBA heavyweight champion of the world, known as the Atlantic City Express. Please welcome Bruce Seldon. 229 pounds for Bruce Seldon.
Everyone is watching Bruce Seldon, trying to determine if he's being intimidated by Mike Tyson. On Friday, there were no signs of that.
I look at Buster Douglas when he beat Mike Tyson. I also watch I look at the fight, how he beat him, what it took to win, but I mainly pay attention to what he said after the fight, when he said how he stayed relaxed and he stayed calm, and he didn't let Tyson, nor Team Tyson, get up under his skin.
I'm joined now by USA Today boxing columnist John Saraceno. John, we got a good look at the fighters. What did you think?
Well, 229 pounds, Bruce Seldon was his lightest in 3.5 years. It's obvious he's really gotten ready for this fight. But in boxing, remember, it is better to fight good than to look good.
What about Tyson?
Well, Mike Tyson, he came in at a good weight. When Tyson's below 220 pounds, he has very fast hands. But the one thing I noticed was that Tyson did not have that heavy armor of muscle like he did for Peter McNeely.
Would there be a tactical reason for that, or is that just coincidental?
Well, it leads me to believe that Tyson hasn't done as much weight work in the gym, and also possibly he's worked more on a cardiovascular aspect, expecting Seldon to run.
Jab and move, so to speak.
Exactly.
All right, we'll have complete coverage of the post-fight on Sports Center on Saturday. Reporting from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas with John Saraceno, I'm Mark Schwartz, ESPN.
Thanks, Mark. Seldon the boxers, Tyson the jockeys. Tyson is older, smaller, lighter, and much, much better. He'll make $15 million, Seldon $5 million, but Seldon, even if he wins this fight, can't take the WBC belt because of a court ruling explaining why it would take longer than the fight will likely last. Still ahead.
We're back to late night. The countdown continues and the main event approaches. It's a respectful and chiseled Bruce Seldon that will step inside the ring Saturday night opposite Iron Mike Tyson. But those attributes, although noted, will not do much for Seldon versus the former champ. The tale of the tape was told Friday. Our Nick Charles translates the details from Las Vegas.
Weight only matters in boxing if you have too much of it. But that was definitely not the case Friday afternoon here in Las Vegas when Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon weighed in for their Saturday night rumble. Tyson arrived looking like a man in a hurry. He showed up early and then weighed in first at 219 pounds. Seldon followed at 229. Both men looked power-packed and ready to go. But before they left, Tyson won the preliminary rounds with an unflinching stare-down that made Seldon blink first. What was the stare-down all about? Tyson seemed to stare you down.
Well, because that's Tyson, you know what I'm saying? He does that. He tries to intimidate his fighters by doing things like that.
Did he intimidate you?
Not at all, man. I let that go in and out. You know what I'm saying? I don't fall into that trap because I know that's part of his game plan.
Seldon's confidence will come into play only if he can get Tyson's respect through his punches. Tyson, though, clearly intends to go right after Seldon. And so what we have are the following possibilities and probabilities. Bruce Seldon uses the well-known boxing adage that styles make fights, and that he has the style to stop Mike Tyson's express train cold.
I think it's going to take being relaxed, staying calm, staying confident, and utilizing what has been my claim to fame. That's a good left jab.
I believe he's going to run and jab. You know, these guys believe that's the success of life.
Tyson is contemptuous of even discussing strategy, not because he's afraid of revealing too much, but simply because he knows his game plan is the world's worst-kept secret, unbridled aggression.
My main objective is just to fight. I don't look in, if I'm in a fight and say, well, that's a good jab. He has a good jab. Well, I respect that. That's good. No, I just want to kill them. You know, just do my best.
It's going to be a ferocious pace. Mike is going to come out on him, and he's going to just push him right across the ring. He's going to cut the ring off on him, be effective, throw a lot of combinations. Mike is going to be ferocious.
But Seldon feels he's learned by the fatal mistakes of Tyson's past opponents, who tried to outslug the supreme slugger.
No, I'm not going to take the fight to him. That's where a lot of the guys make their mistakes, by just going out thinking they're going to imitate Mike, that beat him at his own plan. You know, I'm definitely not going to do that.
Bruce Seldon can't match Mike Tyson's numbing power, but he can't run forever. And when he stops, Tyson fully intends to violate his space and then to tear him apart. Tyson can't afford to look ahead, but his next opponent can. Former heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield scheduled to fight Tyson here November 9th. And he says he intends to fool the critics who say that's a fight that's lost its allure.
People say, who did you compete against? You can say Joe Blow and nobody know, but you say, well, I competed against Mike Tyson. Oh, I guess that was a tough fight. I'm saying, but these are the things that make one what you would consider great in the game of boxing. If you ain't fought nobody that considered great, then how could you say you're great? I'm saying, so it's good for the game.
That's a story for November, though. The more immediate situation is Tyson-Seldon Saturday night. Join us same time right here for the complete story of who won and why, plus interviews with the winner and the loser. That, though, is the story right now from Las Vegas. Let's go back to Atlanta.
Seldon's manager says his fighter is an incredible athlete. He's fast, he's strong, he can run, he can jump. That's all great, but this isn't the NBA. Seldon gets in the ring tonight with Mike Tyson, a man who likes to say he's in the hurting business. Mark Schwartz has our preview from Las Vegas.
When you're facing Mike Tyson, you can't gain too much confidence by looking at his 44 wins. So Bruce Seldon has taken a different tack. He's studying that other fight, the only one Mike lost.
The one fight that he lost is like a replica of what I do. I box, I move, I have great lateral movement, I have great ability, I have great athleticism, and I think that's what's going to confuse Mike Tyson.
Seldon believes Tyson's stamina could be his Achilles heel. After all, he's fought less than 7 rounds in 5 years.
I definitely need to go deep into this fight. I feel as though getting Mike Tyson at least halfway, if I get Mike Tyson halfway, if I can sustain his pressure and his straightforwardness for 6 rounds, he definitely, truly, from the bottom of my heart, he could not beat me.
If he could take what I got to dish for 12 rounds, God bless him, he's going to take it.
Joining me now is John Saraceno. And John, can Bruce Seldon get anywhere near the 12th round?
Good question. No heavyweight in boxing since Joe Frazier applies the kind of pressure that Mike Tyson does. He turns a 20-foot ring into a postage stamp. Also, Bruce Seldon does not have the best chin in the heavyweight division.
Prediction time.
Well, in my opinion, the fight should not go beyond 6 rounds. If Mike Tyson is able to cut off the ring, work Seldon's body, and use his power shots.
All right, we'll have complete post-fight coverage on ESPN. Reporting from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas with John Saraceno, I'm Mark Schwartz, ESPN.
I'm Dwayne Walker, Headline Sports. It was Saturday night at the fights. Well, if you want to call it that. As a matter of fact, the balance of this sportscast is actually longer than the fight itself. Mike Tyson bumped off Bruce Seldon in 1 minute, 49 seconds of round number 1. So surprise, surprise, the WB heavyweight champion of the world is Mike Tyson.
I'm Darren Sutton, Headline Sports. Mike Tyson now owns the WBC and the WBA heavyweight titles after a TKO of Bruce Seldon just under 2 minutes into the fight. After a grazing blow put Seldon on the mat for the 8 count, he dropped him with the left and the fight was over. Some fans appeared dissatisfied with what they saw as the chants of fix could be heard in the crowd.
The people that complained were the people that had cheap seats. They were wearing the top. They couldn't see it.
Well, you had a good view. Tell us what it was like.
It was a pretty good punch right there. No, I'm not about saying I'm the great. I'm not into that all-time great stuff. Whatever happens, happens. You know, I'm just in here to win fights.
On pay-per-view, and all sales are final.
A solid industry if you're not on the pay side of things, Reese. Mike Tyson was a 17-1 favorite to take the WBA heavyweight title from Bruce Seldon on Saturday night, but odds don't cause Iron Mike to throw caution to the wind. Tyson says, quote, "I know when guys fight me, they fight the greatest fight of their life," end quote. The problem is the greatest fight of one's life has only toppled Tyson once in his 45 professional bouts, but Seldon, Tyson's most credible post-prison opponent, is convinced the fight of his life will be loss number 2 for arguably the world's best fighter. Tyson in, looking solid. Seldon, a little less intense. In fact, possibly a little cocky there. Early on, Tyson connects with a solid left. Seldon tried to jab, but instead ended up looking scared throughout. Tyson grazed Seldon with a right on the head, but he was still knocked down. Tyson would land a solid punch. Seldon would get up. Tyson would land a solid left that would send Seldon back to the canvas. Seldon tried to stand, but fell back in the corner. Ref Richard Steele called the fight at 1:49 of the first round. This was Tyson's 3rd quickest knockout in a title fight, and probably the quickest you ever lost $40 in your life. 109 seconds in all. Tyson's reasoning for the quick result, quote, "I'm punching harder these days." Our Al Bernstein is in Vegas and saw the whole thing, what people are calling a fix. Al?
So on Saturday night here at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Mike Tyson wins the WBA version of the heavyweight crown, knocking Bruce Seldon down twice in the first round in a devastating performance. Our Mark Schwartz talked to both fighters afterwards.
I hit with a right hand on top of the head, and he went down, and I was throwing pretty hard punches.
Well, were you surprised that he went down on that right? Because it seemed like he was slipping to start.
I believe it hurt. I was throwing hard punches.
The first knockdown was more, I would have to say, was more of an elbow that must have touched a nerve or something. But the first knockdown was definitely not a fake. You know, he hit me.
You clearly came out on the attack. You were not going to dance and move with this guy. You wanted to eliminate him.
Of course, I'm in the hurt business, and I'm the best at what I do, and that's why I do it.
Tell me about the second knockdown. Was it a left hook?
It was a left hook, yes. I was just throwing punches with tremendous effect, and that's my main interest. I was calm, relaxed. I was cutting the ring off. Took away all his mobility with his jab.
If you look at the tape, you know, the second punch was a very clean shot. He caught me right on the point of my chin. And I was just rattled. I was just rattled. You know, there's no question about it. You know, the guy hits very hard.
You have fought less than 8 rounds in 5 years. Do you even know how good you are right now?
Well, you know, I put so much out in the gym, and I guess every time I try, it's wars in the gym every day. Everything I go to the gym and train and spar is a fight every day. So I guess that's why I put my work in that.
9 weeks from tonight, Evander Holyfield.
He's in a lot of trouble. He's in a lot of trouble.
You know, it's 5 years later, and the same thing going to happen that was going to happen in 1991. You know, I'm going to still be victorious, and I'll still be the champ.
Joined now by USA Today's John Saraceno. And John, a very confident Evander Holyfield as he gets set for his November 9th fight against Mike Tyson. Some bravado there, but then we saw a lot of bravado from Bruce Seldon leading up to his fight Saturday night with Tyson.
Yes, we did, Al. You know, many, many years ago, the MGM produced the picture, The Wizard of Oz. Saturday night, Bruce Seldon came into the ring and gave us lions and tigers and Tyson, oh my. That's how afraid Bruce Seldon was. I think he was determined not to take a beating, and that's why he looked so confident all the time.
You know, it did appear that the one right hand that Mike Tyson hit him with, or nearly hit him with to knock him down the first time, was a very grazing punch. It just didn't look like it had much on it.
Well, I mean, I felt the breeze from where I was sitting at ringside. I don't know if a punch landed or not. It didn't appear on the replay that that was the case. Certainly the second punch, the left hook by Mike Tyson, that landed, and Richard Steele stopped the fight.
Ironically, Bruce Seldon is a much improved boxer, but he didn't show it against Mike Tyson. Well, when Tyson gets in the ring against Evander Holyfield, we assume, and I'm sure it's true, it'll be a much tougher battle. Holyfield has never lacked for courage, heart, or skill in the ring.
But that's one of his problems, Al. He loves to rumble in the ring. He's got a lot of heart. He will stand there and fight you. Against Mike Tyson, that is a prescription for disaster. He has to box and try to punch, pick his spots. Also, Evander has a lot of wear and tear in his body. That spells trouble.
So will Evander Holyfield be able to call upon those skills he once had as a cruiserweight and in his early days as a heavyweight? We'll see on November 9th. For John Saraceno and Mark Schwartz, I'm Al Bernstein at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas.
Wayne Walker, Headline Sports. It was Saturday night at the fights, well, if you want to call it that. As a matter of fact, the balance of this sportscast is actually longer than the fight itself. Mike Tyson bumped off Bruce Seldon in 1 minute, 49 seconds of round number 1. So surprise, surprise, the WB heavyweight champion of the world is Mike Tyson.
With boxing, and you know, Peter McNeely's not looking so bad right now.
Yeah, not bad at all. You know, Bruce Seldon really, all week, he's gone out of his way to praise Mike Tyson. And tonight it seemed that Seldon stepped into the ring, bowed down, paid homage, and bowed out. Seldon lasts just 20 seconds longer than Peter McNeely, but at least McNeely charged across the ring and took a few wild swings at Iron Mike. More than can be said for Bruce Seldon. Nick Charles is in Las Vegas. Nick, you were there. Maybe you can shed some light on what appears to be another disappointing night for fight fans.
Mike, it took 1 minute 49 for Mike Tyson to annex another chunk of the heavyweight championship. But Bruce Seldon appeared too willing a victim, as a shocked crowd and a bewildered Nevada State Athletic Commission watched Seldon hit the deck twice. The first knockdown was ruled, or thought to be, a slip by Richie Steele, the referee. To others, it looked like a dive. The second knockdown came from a good Tyson left hook, but hardly the evening-ending blow it became.
There was definitely no fix in that fight. You know, like I said earlier, I didn't train 12 weeks to come in here and take no dive. I wanted to continue to hold on to my title. It's just Mike Tyson's such a great fighter, you know what I'm saying? He's a devastating fighter, and I tell all the guys that's going to fight him, you got to do more than train hard. You got to just, I don't know what you got to do.
Well, we weren't in that ring, but we saw the first knockdown, and it looked like a slip even to Richie Steele, who didn't start counting.
The first knockdown was more, I would have to say, was more of an elbow that must have touched a nerve or something. But the first knockdown was definitely not a fake. You know, he hit me, he grazed me, you know, and I had my head down, and the only solution for me to do was to go down. You see, the first knockdown, I got right back up.
Obviously, the first knockdown to the crowd didn't look good, but when a kid like Tyson's throwing punches, no matter where he hits you, it's on the top of the head or not, staggers you.
Have you looked at the replays, though? It looked like he hit him with a jab, missed with a right, and just leaned on him, and down went Seldon.
I saw some of it but I haven't looked at it real closely yet. But I heard all the crowd yelling.
Almost lost in the tremendous swirl of controversy was Tyson's victory. He told us right after that his game plan was clear and direct. Attack like a heat-seeking missile.
You know, I mean, I was just relaxed, and my objective was just to cut the ring off and add a great deal of pressure and throw extremely hard punches.
What happened then when you hit him? I mean, we saw the replays. You hit him with a left, you missed with a right, and you seemed to cuff him, and he went down.
I was just throwing hard punches. I mean, I don't know what happened. I hit him solidly with the first one they went down with, and I just came, and I don't know. I was just throwing the punches. I was watching the precision of his punches because I was doing the best I could to get out of the way of his punches and throw my punches at the same time. So in my style of fighting, I have like a fraction of a second to throw punches or to think what's going on.
I know you wanted to go out and create aggression. Then when he got up, took the standing 8 count, you hit him with a left. I mean, it didn't look, I know you're a pulverizing puncher. It looked like a good punch, but how solid was it? Because the crowd thought, this guy went down.
Well, you know, I mean, the people that complained were the people that had cheap seats. They were wearing the top. They couldn't see it.
Well, you had a good view. Tell us what it was like.
It was a pretty good punch, I do.
Well, next up for Mike Tyson, if he could fill the seats here at the MGM Grand Arena, Evander Holyfield, November 9th. On the undercard, IBF champion Michael Moore fighting Francois Botha. The winners are expected to fight in March. Also, Riddick Bowe will get his rematch with Andrew Galata December 14th in Atlantic City. But that's the story on a controversial night here in Las Vegas to the minute. Bruce Seldon has a lot of soul searching to do. He said he just wants to take some time off, and he is clearly embarrassed at what happened.
Nick, let's look ahead. Evander Holyfield was very prominent tonight, ringside. He was at the post-fight press conference. Maybe this fight, Holyfield-Tyson, is 5 years too late, but what does Evander Holyfield have to do to survive and maybe even beat Mike Tyson? Can he do it?
Boy, I don't think he can at all. I think Tyson is sharp and at the top of his game. I don't think his game plan's going to change at all. I think Evander Holyfield's style is custom-made. He's right in front of Mike Tyson to be hit. He doesn't back off. He doesn't have a lot of defense, and he's clearly slid down the ladder in terms of effective skills, Mike. So I consider it another short and maybe very brutal ending in November.
All right, thanks, Nick. At least we can bank on Evander Holyfield putting on a better show come November. As for banking it, Mike Tyson takes home $15 million for 1 minute 49 of work. Bruce Seldon banks $5 million.